the theme or themes I've chosen for this year is really for the friends, us friends, is about Bacon's great Instauration. So we can delve deeper and deeper into the mystery of it and the meaning of it, to discover more of the wisdom upon which it's founded, and to try to see what it's really for and what we can learn from it and what relevance and use it has now and in the future. Because it's made for now and for the future. It's not something in the past. And if we look more into it, from this we might discover what needs to be developed further, what needs to be practiced, and in fact what could be improved upon or changed, because Francis Bacon always said he was just setting out a beginning, a light to lighten our footsteps into the future. So he always saw that we could add to or alter or improve, as it were, what he started off. But the more we look into it, the more I've looked into it and other people, it's so mind-boggling. You kind of wonder what on earth we could add to it, but we could try and practice it. That's the point. And then we might get more knowledge, which we can then add to this whole thing. So this particular talk today is going to be about the Great Instauration itself. And then the next talks will be about the foundation stone and great laws on which the temple of light is built that Bacon talks about. And then the actual building of that temple. And then the last one this year will be trying to understand and know the final causes that Bacon refers to. I mean, there are other causes too, but I've chosen that for us to look at as being rather interesting. Now, what is the Great Instauration for? Well, basically, as described by Francis Bacon, it's to build a temple in the human mind. So just to quote from what he says in his Novum Organum, his new method, "I am not raising a capital or pyramid to the pride of man, but laying a foundation in the human understanding for a holy temple after the model of the world. That model, therefore, I follow. For whatever deserves to exist deserves also to be known. For knowledge is the image of existence, and things mean and splendid exist alike." Now, of course, like all Bacon's writings, there's a huge amount just in that small quotation. But the main thing to note is that the aim of the Great Instauration is to build a temple, a holy temple. Now, those words are chosen carefully, a holy temple in the human understanding or human mind. And he's laying a foundation for it. Now, these are important words to note, actually. Then by world, he means not just this planet we're on, but actually the whole world of the universe. And so Novum Organum is written in Latin, so you could translate that Latin word as universe. So in other words, as he goes on to say, the existence, everything that actually exists, that is what we need to study and get to know. And by getting to know it, he means getting to know what lies behind the outer forms, and what are the causes? What are the causes of everything? What are the laws? What are the great laws? Now, the word he chose, the Great Instauration, it's a word actually taken out of the Bible, the Latin Bibles, and Instauration refers to the renewal or restoration or renovation or repair, but in a new and better way, the temple of old. And it refers to, in the Bible, it refers to Solomon's temple. And it was actually repaired several times, but it was, as it were, completely rebuilt on old foundations that were still remaining at one particular time in history. And this is what Bacon's really referring to. And this is when the Israelites were taken in, and the Jews were taken into captivity, and the temple was razed to the ground, except like certain foundations were left. And then after a time, some of the Jews were allowed to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. and so on. And they were led by somebody called Zerubbabel, Prince Zerubbabel. And so there's a whole story in the Bible which is told in greater detail in Freemasonry, particularly in what's called the Holy Royal Arch degree of Freemasonry. And this is what Bacon's referring to. He gives many, many clues in his writings to this. Now, why does he choose this? Well, it's also involved with the Royal Arch degree and what that means. And these things are very ancient, in fact. But also the words are carefully chosen. So first of all, there's the Temple of Solomon. Then there's a Temple of Zerubbabel, which is Solomon's temple rebuilt, but in a new way. It's built on old foundations, but the superstructure is mostly new, using some of the stones of the old, but building a new structure in an even better way. That's how it's historically how it's thought to have been. Well, the clue is in the words. Solomon is from a Hebrew word shalom, meaning peace, and peace also means something that's virtuous or pure. That's what peace means, virtuous or pure state of being. So if you're in a pure state of being, for instance, you're a peaceful person, and that peace emanates from you as a result. So Solomon itself, as a word, means man of peace. That's how it's interpreted, the man of peace. So it's a temple of peace. Solomon's temple is a temple of peace. When it's rebuilt as Zerubbabel's temple, Zerubbabel actually means holy word, or the seed of the word, the Son of God. And it's from a Hebrew word zeru, meaning offspring. But sometimes it's taken as being from the Greek haro, which means sacred or holy. So it has these two meanings. And the Baal is another version of Bel, and that means Lord. And Bar itself, B-A, is the Hebrew for son, and El is the Hebrew for God. So Bar-El, or Barbel, means son or word of God. So you're going from a temple of peace, which means virtue or purity, into a temple of the holy word of God. In other words, you're going from one state of being into another state of being, which is even higher. And of course, it's referring to the initiatory process where we first have to become pure, morally pure, and then that's said to be, we're then virgin souls. And that means we're filled with love, and that love gives birth within us to what's known as our golden child. And then that golden child is born from us. And then you go into the greater mysteries of enlightenment. And this is all acted out richly through first of all, the three fundamental degrees, which in Freemasonry are known as the craft degrees. Then you go through a sacrificial death, well, love in action, in service to others. You're willing to give your life for others, that others may live better. And it refers mainly to a psychological death, but sometimes it's also physical death. And Jesus acted this out for us. And then it's followed by the resurrection and ascension. And that resurrection and ascension is what takes you into Zerubbabel's temple. So this is what we're talking about. This is what Bacon's talking about. Zerubbabel's temple. He's talking about something higher than most people realize what it's all about. And it's based on having put love into action in a sacrificial way. Otherwise, there can be no Zerubbabel's temple. And so the whole history of Solomon's temple and its destruction and so on, and the Jews going into captivity and so on, it's an acting out by a whole society of the sacrificial death. And then comes the resurrection after that. And you get Zerubbabel's temple built, and the Jews are restored back to their holy land and Jerusalem. So this is what Bacon's taken behind his story. Another biblical term that's in the New Testament is we start with a natural soul, And then by going through these degrees of initiation, Christian degrees of initiation, then we die, sacrifice, in a sacrificial way or psychological way. We die and we raised again as what's called a spiritual soul, which St. Paul in one of his letters calls the Lord from heaven. So first we're the natural soul, and then we're the Lord from heaven. We become the spiritual soul who returns to help the world over and over and over again. And Bacon and his friends, they lived in Elizabethan times, and at that time there was Freemasonry going on, but it's a craft Freemasonry, but it contained a speculative core to it. And that was gradually built up in Queen Elizabeth's time, became very strong. And Bacon took it over, and he separated that speculative core from the craft and established what's nowadays called speculative Freemasonry. And that took off in a very big way, as we know, right across Europe first, and then the world. And but always the higher degrees, you go through the craft degrees, but higher than that, you get into the what was then known as the Rosicrucian level, which is the level of the spiritual soul, the enlightened ones, based, as I say, on love in action all the time. Otherwise, you don't get there. So you go from the lesser mysteries to what's known as the greater mysteries. So first of all, we have to train ourselves, or be trained, in morals, till we become really pure in our motives. Bacon always said the main thing to look at is our desires, our motives. They're our motivations, emotion, motivation, motivating force. That's what we should really study and learn to control and make sure they're just loving ones, loving all the time. And then good thoughts and good actions will then follow quite naturally. And that's becoming a pure soul when we can do that regularly, or all the time is the final state. And as we do that, we will give birth to a part of us that's more spiritual, becomes spiritual. That's our golden child, which can get bigger and bigger and bigger, and so on. And eventually becomes strong enough until we can speak the word of God. Just, what we say is truth, because we know that truth, so we can speak that truth and be inspired by it. So the two definite stages. Now in the Orphic mysteries, which are very connected with the Christian mysteries, the virgin soul, or pure soul, was represented by Persephone, and she was set on fire with love for divine love, basically, because God is love for divine love. She was filled with that love, impregnated by that love, that divine love, and that gave birth to her child within her. And that child was born as Zagreus. Zagreus was attacked and torn to pieces, but his heart was rescued, and he was raised up or ascended to heaven as Dionysus, which means son of God. Now Jesus, when he came, he acted that out with his disciples. The virgin soul was symbolized by the Virgin Mary. She acted that role out for us, Mary, the virgin soul, and she gave birth to Jesus, who was Zagreus, who had to go through his tests, being torn to pieces, and then the resurrection and ascension to become the Christ, Son of God. So when we're talking about Bacon's great instauration, we're talking about very profound things, in fact. How from being mortal, we become immortal. How do we do it? How do we do it? And he has a vision, which others had also. He wasn't the only one who had this, of eventually going into a golden age here on earth where humanity is illumined. We still have a mortal body, but we also created our immortal self, and the two become one. You've got the mortal and immortal blend together as one, like Gemini do. They become fused as one, so they can become both mortal - immortal. The Son of God, Son of Man, Son of God. Two things, like exactly the same as the title of Jesus. So this, as far as I can understand it, is exactly what Bacon is aiming for. And he always said that he saw his philosophy and science developing alongside mainstream philosophy and science. Because most people are not ready for this sort of thing, can't do it yet, but they will one day. But those who can do this, they will be involved with this whole story of the Great Instauration, and all the time training themselves to create this higher form, this higher body, this body of light known as the Temple of Light, Temple of Zerubbabel, and be able to speak the word of truth. And of course, the more of us that can do this, if you like, it's more hope for the world, because we can do great work in the world and raise the whole world up. And that's the vision given out by the great prophets, including Bacon. Now, the temple that Bacon's talking about he talks about is the temple of philosophy, or a temple of light. And by that he means the philosophy will lead to a science, a knowledge of truth. Philosophy is the studying of that truth, making experiment after experiment, testing it out and so on, with love in action. And then you will know that truth. And then that is the real temple, temple of knowledge of truth. And that shines with light, the temple of light. And he symbolized it as a pyramid, which actually makes sense, because a pyramid is a pyre, comes from that Greek word, pyramis, which means fire, lightning, energy, and something that's gathered together to be on fire. A pyramid, a pyre of fire, which of course is associated with the phoenix. And fire or flame shines with light. So the pyramid was called that, pyre of fire, temple of light, temple of fire, temple of light. It was also known to the ancient Egyptians as Per Nita. Per means house, and Nita refers to god or goddess, but that also means energy or light. So the pyramid to them was also known as the house of energy, house of light, house of God. It comprises what is known of the divine truth or wisdom. And it's actually what is known in tradition and biblical terms as the Omega or Tau, to give it a Hebrew term, or the bride of the Spirit, which is the Alpha or Aleph. So this pyramid of light is the bride. Just take that in for a moment. It's the illumined, enlightened human soul that becomes immortal as a result of its enlightenment. Now, the underlying aim of the Great Instauration, Bacon says, is to create a new Atlantis, and a new Atlantis that enjoys a golden age on Earth, just as the old Atlantis had a golden age until it descended into corruption and vice and so on. And then there was a destruction of Atlantis. So he takes the old story and sees the resurrection of that happening, which is actually also the state of the world as it is now, and seeing how do we build a new Atlantis with a golden age out of that. And in his story, utopian story, he wrote about it, he called it New Atlantis, and he refers to this as taking place on the island of Ben Salem. Ben Salem, Hebrew word, means son of peace. Ben Shalom, Ben Salem, son of peace. And the son of, and peace refers to the virgin soul, and the son of the virgin soul is like Zerubbabel, Dionysus, Jesus Christ. It's the sun or light of peace. That's what Ben Salem means. And then it's a whole new golden age on Ben Salem is created thanks to somebody called Solamona. Now this is like a second Solomon, There was the original Solomon, but then you have a new Solomon who's called Sol-la-mo-na, S-O-L-A-M-O-N-A. So it's another way of saying Zerubbabel, really, going from the old Solomon into the resurrected, ascended Solomon, who's Zerubbabel. And it's also referring, in terms of a golden age, to the great being called in the Bible Enoch. He's the same as Atlas, the king of Atlantis in the golden age. But this is the second one. It was the previous one, and now there'll be a new one. And he saw this occurring, starting to occur at least right now, at the end of this great age, just as Jesus did, because Francis Bacon was following the teachings of Jesus very much and knew some of the inner teachings that Jesus only taught to his disciples and passed on esoterically like that through the mystery schools. So this is a second Enoch, a second Atlas, also known in Christian terms as the second coming of Christ. There was an earlier Christ appearance, and now there'll be a second Christ appearance in a big way, like in Atlantis of old. And the other interesting thing about the name Solomona that Bacon creates, it's a created name by Bacon, it can have two meanings. It can be divided up as Sol-a-mona, which roughly means sun and moon, and it makes sure it has two A's in it as well to give you the AA idea, which refers to Thoth, meaning truth. So Latin sol means sun, and mona actually means lady, which refers to the moon. So in Latin or Italian, it's an Italian short form, for instance, of Madonna. Madonna means my lady. So Mona means my lady, and the moon is the symbol of the lady. So Solomona can mean either sun and moon, or, which is male and female in that sense, or just on itself as a complete word, Solomona, it means the alone or supreme lady. Because sola in Latin and Spanish can mean by oneself or alone. Just like kings and queens are said to be alone because they're at the supreme position in society, that they're all alone, they're singular, you know, there's nobody else like them. There can be many ministers, but there's only one sovereign, all alone. That's what it's referring to, the alone or supreme lady. And she, of course, is bride of the Spirit, or truth revealed. So that's a very subtle hint again, what Bacon's talking about. Then on the island of Ben Salem, there was, in the story, there's a college called Solomon's House, or the College of the 6 Days' Work. And the high initiates of that are said to wear red crosses on their turbans. They're wearing turbans and red crosses elsewhere. And of course, this is referring to the Red Cross fraternity. Red is the color of gold. Metal gold is represented heraldically by the color red. So the Red Cross is the gold cross. And the Rosicrucians call themselves the Society of the Golden and Rosy Cross. The two things go together. So Solomon's House is a Red Cross or Rosicrucian fraternity. Fraternity in those days included women, men and women. Frata, Latin frata. This is the problem now with English. We don't understand. It needs to be rewritten, some of English, because man originally meant male, female, as it's still written in the Bible. God created man, male, female, as the image of God, who is also male, female. But, and man means mind. So there should be, nowadays, when you're referring to a man as a male person, we should have another word in English for that. The Hebrews had a different word for a man and a woman. It's just in English we've confused it, and in other languages too, I guess. So you've got the idea of God just being male in Christianity for so long, which has been devastating. But the ancients knew that jolly well gods and goddesses all the time, always equal, because the divine is both. But the feminine aspect is seen as the truth, the one who holds the knowledge of the wisdom. The male aspect, or son, is seen as the wisdom, but the feminine aspect is seen as the one who knows that wisdom and shines with it. As a result, she gives birth to the child as a result, which is called light. Now, the purpose of the College of the 6 Days work, which refers to the 6 days of creation, the purpose of this college was to discover natural or universal laws and how to use them charitably. That's the purpose of this whole scientific college of the 6 days work. And Bacon chooses the name the 6 days work on purpose, referring back to the story of creation in the first chapter of the Bible, of Genesis. And the 6 days work, of course, leads to the 7th day of rest, as it's called in the Bible. Rest means peace, but the sort of peace that's also illumination. And Bacon explains it as the time of pure joy, enjoyment. God rested to enjoy the work that had been created. God being male, female, God and goddess. Abba, Ama, they're called in Hebrew. Now, I want to take you deeper into this. You know, what are these 6 days work, and how did Bacon represent them and talk about them and so on? So I'm going to share my screen now. So I hope you can see it. Can you see it all right, everybody? Great, okay. So what I'm showing you is the frontispiece from the 1640 version of Bacon's Advancement of Learning. It's the English translation of his Latin version that came out in 1624. But this is the English translation, and people still alive who knew Bacon, they said this is extremely accurate translation, and perhaps maybe was the original written by Bacon himself. We don't know. But anyway, the 2 special pictures were drawn for the frontispiece and the title page, which I'll show you in a moment. But they give a lot away. Bacon was now dead, and so a lot of the things that had been kept very, very secret and hidden during Bacon's lifetime could now start to be made known, because it was safe to do so, or moderately safe to do so. But Bacon always worked, like John Dee before him and others, and Jesus did too. You don't cast pearls before swine, but you show signposts there. So those who are really ready to understand and want to understand can see those signposts and go deeper into it, and then they get caught on like a treasure hunt, Bacon calls it, or game of hide and seek, taking you deeper and deeper into learning what truth is and how to put into practice and so on. So you'll see in this frontispiece, Bacon's shown there sitting at a desk, and he's writing in a book. And if you look to his left, you'll see 2 other books stacked on the table, labeled 1 and 2. If I point to them with my pointer, book 1, book 2. And on the shelf above, you'll see 4 more books, books 3, 4, 5, and 6, which of course makes the one he's writing in at the moment on his desk the book 7. And these are separated in this way on purpose. It's books on the shelf which really are to do with the pyramid itself and its foundation it's built on. And books 1 and 2 are the preparation for doing that building. And then book 7 is the final thing of it. Now, books 1 to 6 refer to the 6 days of creation. They're very, very strongly and carefully linked to those 6 days and designed accordingly from the ancient wisdom. Bacon's based everything about the great instauration on the ancient wisdom, to be found in the Bible, but a lot of the biblical things also have even older sources as well, which one can trace. So it's the wisdom passed on through the ages, and Genesis, story of creation, is a real key to this. So the 6 days of creation are also known as the 6 days of work, God's work, which Bacon describes elsewhere as love in action. The work that, and in the Bible statement, which he quotes, the work that God works from beginning to end, which is love in action. He talks about that in his essays on Cupid, or love, which is the Roman name for Eros in the Orphic Mysteries, Dionysian and Orphic Mysteries. Love in action, the work that God works from beginning to end. So all 6 days of creation, which is God's work, is love in action. So take that in, because this is what we're dealing with here. The great instauration is based on love in action. That's why it can't be the ordinary science that most people do. This is a science for those who've chosen the path of love and are trying to follow that path of love. And we initiate ourselves. We take the initiative. That's what initiation means. You enter into that path of training. We initiate ourselves. It's often said that somebody else initiates us. No, they do. They simply help us to be in. We have to take that decision ourselves. It's our will. We will it. We want it. And that's the initiation. I want. Then you immediately enter that path that you've chosen by wanting it. So if you want love, if you want something good, you enter that mystery of love. That's what it means. And the 6 days of creation, this is the way that God works, and therefore a way that we should also learn to work as well, love in action. Now, the 2 books you'll see stacked here on the table refer to the survey and plan. That's in the book 1, like an architect's plan. So an architect will go and survey the land first, and then he'll make a plan for the temple, an archetype for it. And then the second book is about the method of how it's going to be built. So these are 2 things that have to be thought out first of all. Got to have the architect's plan, and then the architect's got to work out how it's going to be built. So he gets the builder to come along and help him work that one out, and then you're ready. Then you can start to do it. But you've got to gather your material to do this. So the actual building of the temple is finding the material for it, and then taking the material and building up the temple. And that's what the 4 books on the shelf are all about. The 3rd book is the material itself, which in the Freemasonic situation, they're the rocks. They're the rocks from the quarry, if you like, quarry of stone, the rocks and stones. So you have to take those, gather those, and then you start to carve them, shape them, and polish them. And then when they're ready, you raise them up and build them into the temple structure itself. But first of all, you've got to carve them, shape them, and polish them. And these are symbols for the 3 degrees, craft degrees of initiation. Then the 7th book that Bacon's writing on the desk it represents the 7th day. rest and enjoyment of what's being created. And if you look carefully at this, I don't know if you can enlarge it. I've enlarged it with a magnifying glass, but on the left-hand page of the open book are written two words, mundus and mens. They're Latin words. They mean world and mind. Whilst on the right-hand page, Bacon has just completed writing the phrase in Latin again, connubio jungum stabili, which means the conjunction made firm by marriage. So mundus and mens, world and mind, have been joined together in marriage. And this is very much behind Bacon's work. We have to think what we're going to do and then do it. So it's thought in action, and that thought then marries that action. And if it's good thought about truth and it's put into action, it'll be truth, and the two things produce truth revealed, produce illumination, and that's what's known as the mystical marriage. And then you enjoy it. You have the marriage, and you enjoy the wedding and everything that follows. That's the idea. Now, if we go to go to the next page, which is the title page after the frontispiece, you'll find you've got the books again, but they're shown differently on the title page. And the books here are associated with the great pillars. So you've got the great pillars of Atlas or Hercules or Solomon's pillars of Solomon's temple. Each side, they're also known as the great pillars in Freemasonry and elsewhere. The great pillars symbolized by sun on the right-hand side and moon on the left. Now, the right-hand side is the right-hand side of the picture. So in other words, we're approaching a temple ready to go into it. So that if you were coming out of the temple, then your right hand would be by the right-hand pillar and your left hand by left-hand pillar. But to go in, it's like looking at somebody else. You know, so you're looking at a picture, you're seeing truth face to face in this way. And so the picture's right-hand side is on our left as we look at it, and the picture's left-hand side is on our right as we look at it. So the sun is the symbol of the right-hand side that gives the light, and the moon is the symbol of the left-hand side, the mind that receives that light in order to understand it and know it. Giving out the light or wisdom and receiving it. Sometimes they're symbolized as the moon, as the heart on the right-hand side and an eye on the left-hand side. The heart gives out the wisdom, and the eye, symbol of the mind, sees it and understands it, puts into action and knows it. So that's what it's referring to. But if you look at the bases of each pillar, you see the books, first 6 books put there. So on the right-hand pillar, you've got books 1, 2, and 3. On the left-hand pillar, you've got books 4, 5, and 6. Aha, where's the 7th book? We'll come to that in a moment. But important to understand that this right-hand pillar is associated with the wisdom, and the left-hand pillar with the understanding of that wisdom, the mind that understands. And so how has Bacon organized his great instauration, the books of his great instauration? Why like this? Well, I'm going to take you to a previous book written by somebody who preceded Francis Bacon, really. And Francis Bacon, we know, became the chief or head of the Rosicrucian fraternity, but he took over from somebody else, and that somebody else would appear to have been somebody called John Dee. John Dee published his Monas Hieroglyphica in 1564, a very famous book. And this is the title page of it. And here you can see the pillars here shown in a more classical way. And they're the right-hand pillar with the sun, left-hand pillar with the moon. I also want you to see how he relates the alchemical elements of earth, water, air, and fire, because this is a very special way. There are different ways it's been done in tradition, but this is one of the classic ways, and very important to understand because Bacon uses it as well. So you've got fire, ignis fire on the right-hand pillar, and you've got air, which means air, of course, on the left-hand pillar. Fire for wisdom, air for intelligence or understanding. Heart and mind, in other words. Heart aflame with love, and the mind, airy mind. Now the other elements, if you go down to the bottom of the right-hand pillar, you'll see a picture here in a circle, and that's a picture of a landscape representing the element earth. So the right-hand pillar is associated with the elements fire and earth. The left-hand pillar is associated with air, and you come down to the picture at the bottom, and that's a seascape with a ship on it. So that's water, air and water for the left-hand side. One of the philosophical statements about these elements is that the fire and earth represent the original polarity of heaven and earth in the divine scheme. Heaven and earth, or Abba Ema, if you like. And then in order to bring together their marriage in expressing of their love, there had to be the in-between elements to make it possible. And these are air and water, which are to do with the mind, the thinking mind, and so on. And that's what enables everything to happen. That's just one of the explanations. Now, in the center, you'll see what's known as the middle pillar, but the middle pillar is always made up of, in Solomon's temple, of the altar of incense, and then the Ark of the Covenant. So it's the way in. You follow the middle path, as it were, and that's your middle pillar, coming to these key places or altars. And here in this picture, the altar is represented by the egg. It's the Orphic egg. In the Orphic or Dionysian traditions, Eros is hatched out of an egg that's laid by Night, the goddess Night, or darkness. And in the egg, you've got what John Dee called the Monas Hieroglyphica. And so it's a hieroglyph of the monad, which means the one single truth. And he shows it like, oh, sorry, got to go back. Shows it like Mercury, moon, sun, and a cross, the Mercury symbol. Because Mercury is from the Egyptian name Mar-Keru, which means the true word, or Christ. Mercury, the word Mercury is derived from Mar-Keru, but also Christos is derived from Keru. So it's referring to Christ. This is the Christos, the Christ, the Mercury. And it's the divine one because it's got the dot in the center. The planetary Mercury doesn't have a dot in the center of the sun symbol. And at the bottom of this Mercury symbol, John Dee has put the symbol of Aries. It means several things, but one of them means this inner fire that's necessary to create everything that goes on, a fire of love. But maybe another time I'll talk more about that. But anyway, there you've got Eros, if you like, in the Orphic egg, in the egg of the mysteries. The Druids also had the same symbolism of this great egg surrounded by the serpent, which represents the father and mother that hatch it out, and then it bursts out. So in a sense, these three, the two great pillars on each side, sun and moon pillars, and the central middle pillar, as it's called, have certain names based on the Hebraic teachings. So in Freemasonry, I'm going to quote you something from the Freemasonic teachings that are given to the entered apprentice when he first enters the lodge. So to quote, "A lodge is said to be supported by wisdom, strength, and beauty, because there should be wisdom to contrive, strength to support, and beauty to adorn all great and important undertakings." That's what the three pillars represent. So the right-hand pillar is the wisdom, which designs everything. It contrives or designs everything. Wisdom to contrive or design. Strength to support. What supports? It's the understanding. Wisdom is supported by the understanding, hence the English word understand, stands under, supports that wisdom, gives it strength, and so on. Wisdom and understanding. And then beauty refers to the central pillar, beauty to adorn, which is the final stage. So first wisdom, then understanding, and then you put that understanding, wise understanding, into action, and that produces the beauty. So good actions are beautiful, basically. That's what it means. And these are known as the three great pillars of the mysteries. And then this whole picture is a gateway. So above you've got a lintel, and on the lintel you've got an arch. It's actually representing, in John Dee's picture, it's representing what's known as the Royal Arch. And within it, you've got all the stars of the celestial heavens. So again, in the teachings given to the entered apprentice, goes on to say the covering of the lodge is no less than the clouded canopy or starry decked heavens, where all good masons hope at last to arrive by the aid of the theological ladder, which Jacob in his vision saw extending from earth to heaven, the three principal rounds of which are denominated faith, hope, and charity, teaching faith in God, hope in immortality, and charity to all mankind. This is the reference to the first three craft degrees of initiation, 3 degrees of the lesser mysteries, which in ordinary terms refers to our desire or will. So we've got to learn to have goodwill, and that's, you trust in that. God is good, God is love. So you have goodwill or love, will of love. That's your first degree. That's faith. That starts it off. And then hope is your good thinking, hope in immortality. So you're thinking of creating your immortal self and helping others to create their immortal self. So you go from mortality to immortality. You have that hope, that vision to aim for. And then charity to all mankind, which is the means of doing it all. Love in action. 3 fundamental degrees of initiation. And this is the Rosicrucian level. So you go through the 3 craft degrees, boom, you die sacrificial death of love in action, and you rise up, ascend into the starry heavens, the Rosicrucian level, because you are Christed, or that part of you has become Christed or illumined as a result. The mottos here are very interesting, so I want to read the mottos for you. On the lintel, over the entrance, you've got Latin again. Qui non intelligit, aut taceat, aut discat. That translated, that means in English, who does not understand, either be silent or learn. Who does not understand, either be silent or learn. In other words, it means exactly the same as the other expression, sub rosa, beneath the rose. Be silent or learn. because you're beneath it. You're not yet raised up to the level of the Rosicrucian level. You haven't yet got to the point of being able to speak the truth. So be silent and learn it. That's what it's basically saying. And then on the foundation right below, what's called representing the foundation, got another Latin expression, dorore caeli et pingve dini terrae det tibi Deus, which means in English, God give thee of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of earth. God give thee of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of earth. This is from Genesis chapter 27, verse 28. And it's known as the lordship blessing that's given by Isaac to his son Jacob. This is a shortened version, but it's the complete sentence of the blessing is, therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. That's the full sentence. Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. The corn and wine, as bread and wine, are the earthly symbols of the fat of the earth and the dew of heaven, used in the mystery feasts down the ages, such as in the Dionysian mysteries, the Hebraic mysteries, and the Christian mysteries. They still are used that way. In Christian communion or mass, you have the wafer, that's the bread, and you have the wine, which is shared. So that's what this represents. So the wine is the dew of heaven, and the fatness of the earth is represented by the bread. Now, the dew is quite important. The dew of heaven, the heavenly dew, is also known as Ros, the rose dew. And here on John Dee's title page, you can see the dew dripping down on each side. On the right-hand pillar, dripping down from the sun into a bowl to receive it, and on the left-hand pillar, dripping down from the moon to a bowl to receive it. The dew of heaven is another meaning of Rosicrucian. So the Ros in Rosicrucian can refer to rose or can refer to the rose dew. What is rose dew? Well, the rose dew is also known as the fountain of life, and it's sort of creating your immortal self, also known as the celestial soul with a celestial body or aura. As a mortal soul, or psyche, as it's called, our auras are like an egg, psychic egg. So this is what clairvoyants can see. You've probably seen it yourself or come across books that have shown you this. So if you're looking at the aura of just somebody's psyche or lower self, if you like, the mortal self, this is the egg-like shape. And here it's a very good psyche with the colors. The colors are always in motion, and sometimes not such nice colors appear. It just depends how pure a soul the person is. Anyway, I won't go there any further. Now, when you have put love into action and you create your golden child, your immortal self, you transmute yourself from mortality to immortality, you actually hatch out of the egg, just like Eros hatches out of the Orphic egg, Dionysian egg. And I've seen this. I'm fairly clairvoyant. I can see these things. And so the next stage is that's the celestial body, the celestial form, with an aura that it goes like angel wings, expands out, because your kundalini is rising up through all your chakras, bursting through the head, and then arching out and down and back again. And what that's become as it fountains out, that is the dew of heaven coming down to bless all your environment, to bless the earth, to bless others who are within that aura, if you've ever been close to or near a great soul, you probably feel you've gone into the presence of something wonderful. You're being blessed. Well, that's what you've gone into. You've gone into this heavenly dew, this great blessing. And I'm showing you all this because John Dee was the precursor of Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon carried on John Dee's work and took it much further. John Dee couldn't see these things for himself. Bacon did. Bacon could see these things. John Dee needed another psychic to transmit angelic messages. Bacon did not need that. As his chaplain said, Bacon had direct knowledge, attunement to the divine. He went there direct. Anyway, let's just show you the two periods of it. So if I go back to the title page again of the Advancement of Learning. So let's look further into this, because the clues are all here. So you've got a pyramid representing each pillar. Each pillar is a pyramid. And what's more, each pyramid is supported on 3 balls, ball bearings, which means it can't be a square-based pyramid. It must be a triangular-based pyramid. So in other words, these are true tetrahedral pyramids. And the tetrahedron is a symbol of fire. These are pillars of fire, which is light, of course, because fire shines with light. And they represent divinity and philosophy, although the books associated with them are Bacon's Great Instauration. But we'll find, as you study the books, the first 3 books bear the wisdom to help us develop an understanding of that wisdom and get things going. So wisdom designs, strength supports or understands, and then you've got the middle pillar represented by the ship, the title veil. Then above that you've got 2 hands shaking hands in a special Freemasonic way. And so I'll go into that in a moment. Let's go back to the pyramids. And if you look very carefully, you'll see what's shown is the triangular base is a right-angled base. So each one has a triangular right-angled base, which suggests what's known as the Pythagorean theorem, and Freemasonry, of course, because the 3-4-5 triangle is called the Pythagorean theorem, is the master square and also the part of the past master's jewel. And it contains a lot of the teaching that Freemasons learn and the symbolism of it all and so on. But in addition to this, each pyramid, because it's on ball bearings, is free to rotate a little bit. Just rotate slightly on its base, rolling on the set of 3 ball bearings that supports it. So this suggests that they are an instrument for the polarization of light, very similar to the nickel prism, which was developed into the polarimeter used in chemical analysis. Now, the nickel prism was invented in the 19th century, but what's shown here on this title page, it's insinuating that Bacon already invented himself, because he did have a chemistry and a physics laboratory at Canterbury, and he's experimenting with light. He says light, physical light, is a symbol of divine light. You know, that's what we should be looking at. And he actually had a little a model of these, which he gave to a friend. That's recorded in a diary. I forget which diary it is, but so he had it. He did this experiment himself. So it makes them very interesting. And then also got the added thing of the right hand pyramid or prism is in the light and the left hand one is in the shadow. Again, it's a traditional way of showing right hand and left hand. So the moon is to do with day, daylight, and sorry, the sun is to do with daylight and the moon is to do with the nighttime. So it's that sort of symbolism. Now, when Bacon talks about his pyramid philosophy, he says it's three-sided. It's a tetrahedral pyramid. One side represents divine philosophy, another side represents human philosophy, and the third side represents natural philosophy. So these are the three sciences to look into, but he puts them carefully as three faces of the one pyramid because they're all interconnected with each other. So most of science is developed just looking at what we call nature, natural science. But in fact, if they look deeper, they would find it also has a connection to what human things and divine things. If we only could see it deeper. The three are one, three in one, one in three, the Holy Trinity idea. And because we're human philosophy and actions need to be trained in order to deal with the natural and divine philosophy, because none of them can be separated, as I said. So Bacon quotes it in his New Organum, his Novum Organum. We construct a history and tables of discovery as much of anger, fear, modesty, and the like, or of the examples of civil affairs, and of the mental emotions of memory, composition and division, judgment, and the rest, as of cold and heat, light, vegetation, or the like. So it's just ramming home, we study all these things together. You can't separate them. Divine things, human things, and natural things. And Bacon calls his philosophy a moral philosophy. That's something that many people have missed about his science or philosophy, is a moral one, because you can't build a temple of light unless you've got foundation of morals. To build a temple of light is dependent on human beings developing a morality based on love and doing all things accordingly. That's what it means. And to develop these morals, we have to know and be guided by the divine laws or wisdom, which enable us to discover and develop moral laws. So it's not necessarily an easy thing to do. Everyone has the potential to be able to love. It's this very natural thing, but how to draw that out and put it into action in the right way, in a moral way, that's what we have to learn to do. And to put the metaphysical laws into action, we have to know and apply the natural laws. Obvious, isn't it? You can't do anything in this world morally unless you're also applying natural laws, because we live in this world in a natural body and natural environments and so on. Then he goes on to point out that the wisdom or laws that we seek are actually hidden in nature, the nature of the universe of which we're a part. And we discover them by inspiration and prophetic teaching and by observation and experimentation. Well, now let's look at the 7 books of the Great Instauration in more detail, which are based on the wisdom of the 6 days of creation, the 6 days of work, God's work, which is love in action. So the first 3 books, the first day of creation, light was created. And light was divided from darkness. That's how that verse in the Bible goes. And Bacon calls this the divisions of the sciences. Science means knowledge of truth, the divisions of the sciences. And this book is described as a survey and a design. It gives out the design of the whole project So it's like the architect's design or blueprint, the archetype. And he described it as the first part exhibits a summary or general description of the knowledge which the human race at present possesses. By knowledge, he means knowledge of truth, knowledge of wisdom. So in this writing of this book, which is represented by the advancement of learning, he puts in the existing knowledge of truth, which is the light, he explains, light given out to teach, guide, and light the path ahead. So it's very easy to read through the advancement of learning and just, pick up bits and pieces and dismiss it. But if we look much more carefully, we'd find it is describing a real knowledge of truth, very deep things in it. Then if you go to the second book, Patterned on the Second Day of Creation, in the Bible, this is when the upper waters, where the waters were divided by the firmament into upper waters and lower waters. In other words, the general waters upon which the Spirit of God moved and God spoke and so on. These waters, which represent, if you like, universal ether, pure matter, they're divided into three parts: upper waters, firmament, and lower waters. And these have been known and described in tradition as the three worlds, called spiritual, celestial, and natural. Bacon refers to his book here as the new method or directions concerning the interpretation of nature. And this is the method or means by which to build the temple or pyramid with the three faces: divine, human, natural. And then the third book deals with the third day of creation. The third day of creation is when the lower waters were divided up into the seas and the earth. So the earth was brought out, as it were, of the seas, of the lower waters, and the waters that were left were called seas, and there was the earth. And then nature starts to grow. So you've got the whole of the life cycle of nature described in that third day of creation. And Bacon refers to this as the phenomena of the universe, or a natural and experimental history for the foundation of philosophy. By history means the material or data bank of facts. You observe nature, and that becomes your data bank, your material, which you're then going to work with through his method. So he describes this. The third part of the work embraces the phenomena of the universe, that is to say, experience of every kind, and such a natural history as may serve for a foundation to build philosophy upon. So this material is the foundation for the pyramid to be built up from it. It provides the materials, if you like, it's the quarry, the stone. But foundation also refers to what biblically is known as the foundation of the universe, upon which Solomon's temple was built. Foundation of the universe. It contains all wisdom. That's the great secret. Foundation stone contains all wisdom, summarized in Kabbalah by the tree of life, with its 10 Sephiroth, 10 Sephiroth, or ciphers. Then we come to the left-hand pillar, and we got the fourth, fifth, and sixth books. The fourth day of creation is when the greater and lesser lights and the stars in the firmament were created. Firmament is also called heaven. And these were set there to mark time and illumine the earth. Now, Bacon refers to his fourth book or stage of the Great Instauration as the ladder of the intellect. And then he goes on to further explain it's the presentation it's full of presentation and inquiry, examples of his method in action. So there are experiments, testing out things, discovery of laws, and the start of philosophy. Just to give you some quotes from what he says about it. And now we have surrounded the intellect with faithful helps and guards, and got together with most careful selection a regular army of divine works. It may seem that we have no more to do but to proceed to philosophy itself. So he wants to give examples of his method, show how it goes on, and he's made a careful selection of divine works, work of God, labor of love, and that's what he gives as examples. So he says, of these, the first is to set forth examples of inquiry and invention according to my method. So this is his fourth book. He explains that he means by this actual types and models by which the entire process of the mind and the whole fabric and order of invention from the beginning to the end in certain subjects, and those various and remarkable, should be set as it were before the eyes. To examples of this kind being in fact nothing more than an application of the second part in detail and at large, the fourth part of the work is devoted. So what are they? What are his examples? Well, many of us have discovered that, well, one of them is clues he gives in his New Atlantis, which is laboratories and so on for studying natural science and creating inventions out of that. But then more esoterically, he set in motion a study of the human emotions and mind through the whole Shakespeare works, particularly the plays, and then also take it further into studying really deeply morals, the laws of morals and so on like that. He established speculative Freemasonry, and then the Rosicrucian level, going even deeper into it from that. And so this is all set up as examples for us to learn from, to follow, and to develop further, and go beyond, basically. And then his fifth book is based on the fifth day of creation. In the fifth day of creation, the creatures of water and air are created by God. Bacon's book he calls the forerunners or anticipations of the new philosophy. Now, these are speculations or temporary axioms, as he describes it. And he says the fifth part is for temporary use only, pending the completion of the rest, like interest payable from time to time until the principle be forthcoming. In other words, he doesn't dismiss speculating. We need it. We need to have ideas, temporary understandings, if you like, until we can prove something is true by putting it into action. And then once we can prove the axioms or ideas we have, then they go into book 6. Book 6 he calls the new philosophy or active science, and these are the final or proven axioms. This is the real knowledge, truth revealed, and it's based on the 6th day of creation, when the creatures of earth and mankind were created. So this is an interesting thought, isn't it? Mankind's purpose is to know God, to know truth, to be made in the image, the likeness of the divine, and to know that divine. Bacon says, the 6th part of my work, to which the rest is subservient and ministrant, discloses and sets forth that philosophy which by the legitimate, chaste and severe course of inquiry, which I have explained and provided, is at length developed and established. So there you have the 2 pillars, as it were. The first pillar, the right-hand pillar, actually contains the knowledge, the wisdom. There it is for us to use. And then the left-hand pillar is actually using that with experiments, trying to develop further knowledge as a result. And then the seventh day, the seventh book, we can enjoy, rest and enjoy. And this is associated with the seventh day of peace, the day when God rested and enjoyed what he created. And in the title page, it's represented by this Masonic handshake. And above it, there is a motto which says in Latin, Ratione et experientia foederantur, which means reason and experience have been confederated together or allied together. It's symbolizing a marriage, a mystical marriage of left hand and right hand, of reason and experience, rational and empirical, mind and universe. He calls it marriage of reason and experience because the right hand pillar is love in action. That is the wisdom. That's our experience. Love in action. Our reason is our thinking about it, our knowledge of it, and so on. So rational and empirical means more than what most people think. Empirical means love in action in Bacon's terms, and that is the wisdom. Mind and universe. The wisdom is in the universe. And this is the crown jewel, what's called Kabbalistically the crown jewel, or the Holy Grail raised up to become the crown jewel of creation, the bride of the Spirit, ready for her marriage. So Bacon gives the game away, really. He says, by this means we presume we have established forever a true and legitimate marriage between the empirical and rational faculty, whose fastidious and unfortunate divorce and separation hath troubled and disordered the whole race and generation of mankind. That's from his Advancement of Learning. And then in his another book, Great Instauration book, and when we have cleared these points and made it plain what is the nature of things and what that of the mind, then we think we shall have prepared and decked the marriage bed for the mind and the universe under the eye of divine goodness. May the prayer of our bridal song be that from this marriage may spring aids for mankind and progeny of inventions which shall overcome to some extent and subdue our needs and miseries. He's referring to the mystical marriage that many people think they've understood, but they haven't quite got it yet, although some have, of course. And this marriage, of course, is accomplished by love in action, charity, the work that God works from beginning to end, which is, as Bacon explains, the summary law, the universal law of all. Love in action. It fills the world, permeates everywhere, underlies everything, if we could only be but aware of it. Now I just want to show you another thing. You symbolize pyramid of divinity, pyramid of philosophy like this, two pyramids. One's the wisdom, the other's the knowledge. And they become married. You celebrate it in this marriage. They are one, and you have this pure joy. And when we do reach illumination, it gives a joy. It gives a pure joy. And that joy is the mystical marriage, symbolized by the two pyramids coming together like this. It's also what Solomon's seal represents. And when they're totally together and consummated, you get what's called the blazing Christ star, the blazing star of the higher mysteries, six-pointed Christ star or Star of David. David means the Holy Spirit, the mystical marriage with the rose of beauty, the rose of human love blossoming within it. Okay, that's enough to share this time. Okay, well, thank you all for listening very much. And I wish you happy days ahead.